The safe wasn't left unlocked by accident. Julian had deliberately left it open as a carefully planned test, the ultimate trial for the first person who had entered his world without being destroyed by his deep mistrust. Julian Carter wasn't always this withdrawn, this emotionally distant. Once upon a time, his reputation commanded respect in prestigious corporate environments, his achievements immortalized on awards, his voice heard in executive meetings, his success featured in major business publications. He had been the driving force behind a maritime shipping corporation that challenged the industry leaders. That influential, authoritative presence had since been buried under mountains of anguish, deception, and harsh life lessons. At just 40 years old, Julian now found solace only in quietude. Quietude was incapable of betrayal. Quietude never pleaded or manipulated. And most importantly, quietude was honest. His residence was a magnificent property located beyond Savannah, Georgia city limits. An imposing brick structure featuring polished stone flooring, wrought iron barriers, and countless chambers where one could easily become lost. 26 chambers, 16 concealed surveillance devices, and 3 crisis alert systems built into the structure. Yet only his footsteps could be heard throughout the empty halls. The community spread rumors about him. They labeled him suspicious, odd, potentially threatening. He had dismissed his groundskeeper for being overly inquisitive. The reasons remained unknown to them. They were unaware that his son had attempted to have him legally declared incompetent solely to gain access to the family inheritance. They hadn't witnessed the depleted financial accounts abandoned by his daughter, the same child who once sought comfort in his arms during storms. They hadn't discovered the falsified medical invoices from his physician, someone he had once considered like family. Julian had discovered these truths through painful experience. People don't simply deceive, they wait patiently, observe carefully, and plot deliberately while maintaining friendly facades. And there had been a time when life held warmth, when Grace, his spouse, existed. She was a sole individual who transformed this frigid mansion into a genuine home. She adored having fresh wildflowers in the entrance hall and filled the atmosphere with the aroma of homemade cinnamon loaves. However, illness took her gradually, and with her departure went the final spark of joy in Julian's existence. Following her death, the residence transformed into a mausoleum. He refused to repaint anything or relocate her belongings, with one exception, the reading room. That space, her preferred retreat, he maintained in perfect condition, undisturbed and holy. Even though he had lost faith in humanity, his love for her remained unchanged. Julian maintained a rigid daily schedule. Morning coffee at 6 o'clock, breakfast cereal by 6:30, brief correspondence review, then extended periods of solitude. He spent time monitoring silent security displays and examining every delivered piece of fruit, as if it were contaminated. The individual who previously managed international shipping operations now existed as a captive within his fortress of suspicion. Weeks had passed since he had voluntarily communicated with another person. His food arrived through anonymous delivery services. Domestic workers came and departed, most surviving only days before resigning, or being terminated for some imperceptible transgression. Then came that particular morning when he made a choice he never anticipated making again. He required assistance. His physical condition was declining. His once powerful frame now shook with exhaustion. He contacted an employment agency in Atlanta and provided them with requirements more extensive than typical job descriptions. No police record, no internet presence, no interest in casual conversation, no inquisitiveness, no inquiries. They forwarded him 3 candidate profiles. He rejected the initial 2 immediately. The third captured his attention. Her identity was Zaria Brooks, 27 years old, reserved, meticulous, focused. Her documentation indicated she was motivated by mission rather than monetary gain. He scoffed upon reading those words. Such language was typically hollow, yet something caused him to hesitate. On Tuesday morning, he observed through a security system as a slender woman exited a worn public transit vehicle and approached his front entrance directly. No cosmetics, no accessories. Simply a serene demeanor and eyes that showed no fear. When he answered the door, she didn't force pleasantries or speak nervously. She inclined her head respectfully, awaiting his invitation to proceed. This was the initial indication that perhaps she comprehended personal boundaries. Once inside, he guided her to the fabric sofa in the chilly, dust-covered parlor. Before he could begin speaking, Zarya posed a question about the reading room. Should she only clean the shelving, or would he prefer the volumes organized by size? He was speechless. Previous candidates inquired about vacation time. None had ever asked something so detailed and considerate. Simply clean, Julian responded after hesitating. Everything remains exactly where it is. She acknowledged this, recorded it in a compact journal, and proceeded with precise, professional inquiries. She never once questioned his history, his relatives, or his fortune. As she departed, Julian found himself observing her figure walking away. It marked the first occasion in years that someone had visited his residence without causing anxiety. However, this didn't indicate he had confidence in her. Nobody entered Julian Carter's existence without facing evaluation. The following morning, before Zarya's first workday, Julian positioned himself alone at the east wing's far end, before a door no other person had accessed. Beyond it lay his personal security chamber containing currency stacks, precious metal coins, jewelry containers, historical property documents, and a single folded document. The safe's access code left on the surface like an accidental oversight. He positioned the heavy safe door partially ajar. Everything was deliberately arranged. Pure temptation. Returning to the monitoring room, Julian settled into his leather seat and focused on the display, waiting. His pulse resonated more loudly than the security equipment's humming. At precisely 8 in the morning, Zarya entered the residence. She immediately began her duties, cleaning surfaces, adjusting cushions, scrubbing areas with quiet effectiveness. For over 60 minutes, she demonstrated no uncertainty, not even a glance toward the valuables positioned throughout the rooms. Then the critical moment arrived. She proceeded down the east wing corridor. Julian leaned toward the screen, watching intently. She stopped at the open doorway and noticed the money. She became motionless, her hands shaking. He tensed his jaw, convinced she would enter, but Zarya remained stationary. Instead, she slowly retrieved her phone, stepped into the corridor, and placed a call. Julian interpreted her words. She was contacting his assistant, calmly reporting the unsecured safe and requesting guidance on whether to secure it or await directions. For the first time in years, Julian's eyes expanded, not with alarm but with amazement. Someone had successfully completed the evaluation. Still, he maintained his vigilance, reminding himself that people transform under stress and pretend until the incentive becomes sufficient. Shortly after, Zarya's device rang again, her mother calling. Her expression immediately shifted. Julian magnified her face as her lips formed unsteady words. Her mother's voice trembled on the call, explaining that the family market, their sole income source, would close unless they secured $38,000 by week's end. Zarya listened as silent tears formed, promising her mother she would discover a solution. After ending the call, she stared back at the open safe. She remained frozen in the corridor, the safe door still slightly open, silently challenging her. One step forward, one handful of bills, and her family's entire future would be secured. Nobody would detect a few missing bundles. Julian possessed billions while she was merely hired help. Her heart pounded as the thought consumed her mind. But then it ceased. Zarya shut her eyes and took a long, shaking breath. This behavior contradicted her character. Her parents had instilled integrity in her, not survival regardless of consequences. Slowly, she reached toward the small paper slip beside the safe. Rather than using the code to open it further, she entered a random combination. The safe chimed and the door secured. Zarya folded the code paper, placed it deep in her pocket, and sank into a nearby seat. She wept, not from regret about her choice, but because making it had required every ounce of her strength. In the monitoring room, Julian remained motionless, eyes wide and fixed. He had witnessed deception and theft, but never someone securing temptation away with such anguish and determination. This woman hadn't simply completed the test. She had demolished his fundamental assumptions about human nature. For 2 additional hours, she didn't leave that corridor, sitting there facing secured safe like a sentinel, protecting something that belonged to another. Julian observed every moment, studying her bearing, her composure, her emotions, her resolve. For the first time in more than 10 years, he felt something awaken within him. It transcended mere surprise or appreciation. It was confidence. When 6 o'clock arrived, Julian finally stood from the monitoring room. For the first time in years, his movement felt unburdened. He walked downstairs deliberately, allowing his footsteps to resonate, so she would detect his approach. Zaria rose as he entered the corridor, wiping away signs of weariness from her expression. However, she couldn't conceal the profound impact of what she had just experienced. Julian observed her through a long, quiet pause. "You remained here," he said gently. Zaria inhaled deeply. "I discovered the safe was unsecured. I contacted your assistant and stayed to ensure nothing occurred." Julian acknowledged with a single nod. "I'm aware." Her expression showed confusion. "You were aware?" "I observed everything," he confessed. "There are surveillance devices throughout the residence. I witnessed your response." Silence extended between them. Zaria looked away, perhaps disappointed or even feeling deceived. When she looked up again, her voice stayed calm. "I comprehend. This is your residence. You have every right to secure it." Julian moved closer and reached into his coat, producing a sealed envelope and offering it to her. Inside was a $50,000 payment. "This belongs to you," he stated. "You've earned it." Zaria examined the payment, then returned her gaze to him, gently returning it to his hands. "I cannot accept this," she declared. "Acting correctly isn't something deserving monetary reward. I did what any person should have done." Julian was astonished. For years, he believed everyone could be purchased. Yet here she stood, declining a substantial sum with dignity. He inquired softly, "What drives you? What makes you different?" Zaria paused, then finally revealed the truth. Years earlier, her cousin required an operation they couldn't finance. An unnamed benefactor covered the expenses. They never learned the identity. But when she applied for this position, she recognized his name on the medical facility's contributor records. She realized he was the donor. That's why she came to help, not a profit. Julian's heart nearly stopped. He recalled that contribution and never imagined he would encounter someone affected by it. Standing before him was the very person who reminded him of everything he once valued. He said little afterward, simply walking to his desk, retrieving a leather portfolio, and presenting it to her. "This is the Winters Trust Foundation. For years, I couldn't locate anyone trustworthy enough to manage it. Until this moment, I want you to direct it." Zaria stared at him, overwhelmed. "I'm merely hired help." "No," he replied. "You're the only person who ever reminded me what humanity truly means." She accepted the portfolio with trembling hands, and in that instant, both understood something profound. Family isn't created through genetics. It's built through trust. Have you encountered someone who demonstrated such moral strength? Share your experience in the comments. We'd appreciate hearing your story. If this narrative moved you, please give it approval. Forward it to someone who needs inspiration today. Remember to subscribe for additional genuine, impactful stories that renew your belief in human goodness. Thank you for your attention. We'll return with another story soon.